He thought she was lost, but he was unaware who she really was. It was just past 2:30 when Tom Carter noticed the figure standing in the alley. At first, he thought the feed had frozen. The young woman on his security monitor wasn't moving. She stood alone, halfway between the camera and the street, facing the lens as if she knew exactly where it was. Still as a statue, unblinking. Tom leaned closer. The timestamp read 14:32. Live. Not a freeze frame. She was wearing a dark mask, the kind people still wore in crowded places, even though most had stopped caring years ago. Her clothes were simple. Gray tank top, tight jeans, but clean. Not someone living on the street. Not local either. He scratched his jaw. The alley wasn't a place you just wandered into. It ran between two buildings behind his rented flat, only lit in daylight, and rarely used unless someone had business that didn't want an audience. Tom narrowed the lens. Her eyes didn't flinch. They followed the camera, like she was waiting for something, or someone. He grunted. Could be another scam. Last week, a kid had tried posing as a lost tourist before asking for cash. But this woman wasn't doing anything. She just stood there. 5 minutes passed. Still no movement. Tom checked the door locks out of habit. The silence inside his apartment pressed in. He'd retired from a lifetime of watching people do the wrong thing. Smugglers, thieves, liars. And they all had a look in their eyes right before they acted. This woman didn't have that look. But something was off. Too quiet. Too still. He reached under the counter and grabbed his old walking cane. Not because he needed it. Because it had weight. Just in case. Outside, the air was damp. Summer heat hung low between the buildings. Tom's steps echoed down the narrow alleyway. She was still there. As he got closer, he noticed the small details. She had a scar along her wrist, partly hidden by the fold in her jeans pocket. Her breathing was calm. Controlled. She didn't back away. 10 feet away now. She looked up at him. Her eyes, blue or maybe green, met his without flinching. Tom stopped. He was about to speak when she said it first. "I was hoping you'd come." Her voice was soft, accentless, American. Tom took a step back, surprised. She made no move to follow. There was no fear in her posture, no sign of panic or desperation, just a quiet certainty. Like she belonged there, like she knew him. But Tom had never seen her before in his life. Or so he thought. Tom didn't answer right away. The woman's voice lingered in the air, like a puzzle piece dropped into a place it didn't belong. He studied her again. Nothing about her screamed danger, but he knew better than to trust appearances. Still, something about the way she stood there made it hard to turn away. He gestured for her to follow. They walked in silence, weaving through narrow side streets. Tom led her to a quiet tea shop he trusted, run by a widow who never asked questions. The place was nearly empty. A single fan hummed in the corner. They sat across from each other. She kept her mask on, her hands folded neatly in her lap. No signs of nerves, no fidgeting. Tom finally spoke. "What do you want?" Her answer came slowly. "To talk. Somewhere safe." He didn't like that. Too vague. Too smooth. His eyes narrowed. She could have said she was lost, or looking for help. But she didn't. She asked for safety, like it was him she feared, or something else watching from the shadows. He asked her name. She didn't give one. Instead, she said something he hadn't expected. "You were in Jakarta, 1994. The words hit like cold water. It wasn't a question. She stated it as fact. Tom shifted in his seat. That was 3 decades ago. A different life. One he had packed away, buried under years of silence and old habits. He hadn't spoken that city's name aloud in more than a decade. She leaned forward, voice low. That's where it began. Tom's heart knocked once against his ribs. He remembered Jakarta, but only in pieces. Hotels that stank of mold, a rainstorm that lasted for 3 days, faces that came and went, and one he couldn't quite place, though it stirred something now. A shadow of a memory behind glass. He asked her how she knew. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her bag, slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a folded photograph. She slid it across the table without a word. Tom opened it. His own face stared back, younger, with darker hair and a crooked smile. Beside him stood a woman he couldn't name. She held a small child. The baby's face was barely visible, but something in the eyes caught him. He looked up. She was watching him. He felt his voice dry out. "Where did you get this?" She didn't flinch. "It was time you saw it." Tom sat back in his chair, gripping the edge of the table. His gut tightened. Either this was the start of a very dangerous lie, or a truth he wasn't ready for. And still, she hadn't told him her name. Tom stared at the photo again, hoping something new would jump out. The woman beside him looked familiar in the way old dreams do, just out of reach. He shook his head slowly and pushed the photo back toward the young woman. "I don't remember this." She didn't react. She kept her eyes on him, calm and steady, like she'd been expecting those words. "That doesn't prove anything," he said. She nodded slightly, like she agreed. But she didn't take the photo back. Tom leaned back in his chair. His hands rested flat on the table, but his fingers twitched. Every instinct in him wanted to walk away. This felt like the start of a setup, one with an emotional edge, which made it harder to see clearly. He scanned her face again. No twitch, no nerves, nothing fake. And that unsettled him more. His voice turned sharper. "If this is about money, say it now." She finally leaned forward, elbows on the table. Her tone was even, not offended, not cold. "It's not." He narrowed his eyes. "Then what?" She sat back again and simply said, "I wanted to see you." Tom felt his jaw tighten. There it was. Vague, emotional, loaded with meaning, but offering nothing concrete. That's how cons worked. They let you fill in the blanks yourself. But then she spoke again. "You have a scar behind your left ear. Small, like a half moon." He froze. That scar had been there since childhood, hidden under gray hair now. He hadn't mentioned it to anyone in years. She continued. "Your favorite drink used to be black coffee with a lemon wedge. You picked it up in Cairo." He didn't answer. "You always carry a small knife in your right boot. Handle's loose." He shifted in his seat. She couldn't have seen the knife. Not unless she'd followed him. Not unless she'd known where to look. His voice came out rough. "Who are you, really?" For a long second, she didn't respond. Then she lowered her mask slowly and said, "My name is May." The name dropped into the silence like a stone into a deep well. He didn't react at first, but something pulled at him. May. He'd heard that name before, somewhere far back. The girl watched him, but not with challenge. She didn't seem proud. She didn't seem desperate. She just seemed patient. Tom's stomach turned. It wasn't fear exactly. It was something deeper, something colder. He stood up without a word and left a few bills on the table. His hands trembled as he reached for the cane. Outside, the alley felt narrower than before. He didn't look back. Not yet. Tom didn't sleep that night. The name May echoed in his mind like a whisper caught in a long hallway. He sat in the dim light of his kitchen, an untouched cup of tea cooling beside him. The photo lay on the table. He'd studied it for hours, hoping to catch the trick, the angle, the forgery. But the more he looked, the more it began to feel real. He stared at his own younger face in the photo. Cocky, reckless, barely older than the girl who'd claimed the name May. He tried to recall the woman beside him, the curve of her jaw, the shape of her mouth. Nothing came easy, but he didn't feel denial anymore. He felt something worse. Doubt. By late morning, he started making calls. Old numbers, cold leads. Most people were gone, dead, or too far removed to care. But one name still picked up. Gary Tran, an ex-contractor who owed Tom a few favors. Gary remembered the Jakarta job. He remembered the storm that grounded them for days, and he remembered the woman, a translator, soft-spoken, careful. Her name had been Lynn. Gary went quiet when Tom mentioned the photo. "She vanished, you know," Gary said. "Disappeared after you left. Some say she went north. Others said she had a kid. Never confirmed." Tom ended the call and sat still for a long time. Later that afternoon, May returned. She stood just outside the alley again, as if she knew the camera would find her. This time, Tom didn't hesitate. He opened the door before she knocked. She stepped inside without a word. There was no mask now, just a tired expression and a small envelope in her hand. She placed it on the table and said, "I found this sealed in an old box. My mother left it. It was addressed to you." Inside the envelope was a worn note. No date, no greeting. Just a line, "I never expected anything from you. Just that one day, you might want to know." Tom folded the note and didn't speak for several minutes. May sat across from him, still and quiet. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She only said one thing more. "You have questions. I'll answer whatever I can." Tom nodded slowly. His heart beat differently now. Not fast, but heavy. Something inside him was beginning to shift, like a locked drawer quietly opening. He watched her as she reached for her tea. Small hands, familiar eyes. The silence between them felt different this time. It wasn't suspicion. It was something closer to recognition. The envelope came back 3 days later. White. Sealed. No markings beyond the lab's return address. Tom held it in both hands like it might break. May sat on the far side of the room, legs crossed, quiet. The TV played softly in the background, some old soap opera neither of them were watching. He opened it without a word. His eyes scanned the first few lines. Then they stopped. For a long moment, he didn't breathe. The room felt still, like even the air had paused. May waited, arms folded loosely, her expression unreadable. Tom looked up. "It says 99.98%. She didn't move at first, just nodded once, almost to herself. A slow exhale left her lips. Not relief, not shock. Just the ending of a long wait. Tom didn't speak. He stood from the chair and walked to the window. Outside, the street bustled with mopeds and chatter, like nothing had changed. But something had. Not out there. In here. He stared out for a while, then turned back to her. "You should have hated me," he said. May shook her head gently. "I didn't know you well enough for that." They shared a quiet laugh, awkward, but real. In the days that followed, they found a rhythm. Mornings started with quiet tea and too much sugar. Tom showed her the back alleys he used to walk when he worked security. May taught him how to order food properly in Mandarin, though he always added too much hot sauce. Neighbors began to wave. Some asked questions. Few got answers. At night, Tom started pulling out old photos, missions, cities, faces long gone. He handed them to her with short stories. She listened closely, not just to the words, but the silences between them. One evening, he rewired the old alley camera. It had caught everything, the first glance, her stillness, his hesitation. He didn't delete it. Instead, he saved the footage, labeled it simply, Day 1. May found the label the next morning. She didn't ask, just smiled faintly and moved on. Weeks passed. Tom's kitchen grew louder. Music played again. He cooked meals he hadn't touched in years, burned most of them. May teased him anyway. It became a house of quiet noise, of two people who hadn't asked for each other, but found something worth keeping. One morning, Tom opened the drawer near his bedside. Inside, he placed two photos side by side. The first, him, young and unaware, standing beside a woman holding a baby. The second, him and May, standing outside the tea shop, both smiling. A little tired, a little unsure, but smiling all the same. He closed the drawer gently. No need to lock it anymore. From the hallway, May called out, "You coming?" He grabbed his cane and nodded. "Right behind you, kiddo."